Mum never really talked much about China because we had 3 other siblings that passed away in China before she came to New Zealand. That's why when she came to New Zealand, within 7 years, she had 6 of us.
我姓邝，名彩計，我係台山水蘭人。喺1910年，我家公離開鄉下，去根山揾錢，同佢一班鄉友喺但伊頓揾到一份洗衣店工作做。我丈夫17歲那年，就去幫佢父親一齊做工。我丈夫20歲嘅時返中國和我結婚，當時我19歲，過開幾年我生咗3個細路仔，佢就要離家出外揾錢。我丈夫走了之後，一切都好慘，只剩低我一個人照顧家婆，好多時都冇錢買米買油，又冇藥物醫療。所以3個細路仔都養生。
My impressions of Toi San when we went back is that it is quite primitive and small. I couldn't imagine ever living there and imagining, my pawpaw having to live there by herself as well without her husband for so long. It was quite humbling.
喺1938年，日本侵略中國。轟炸廣州，哇！好多農村，好快就打到我哋鄉下啦。
I was 17 when I first went to China. It's the only time I've been to China. I think it was quite not as I expected. The villages when we went back were quite run down. Some of the villages we went back to didn't have, I guess, real buildings per se. They were clay houses or kind of brick huts with not a lot in them.
我哋開始去一個好艱難嘅路程，途中見到好多中國兵攜身攜帶武器、手榴彈去打仗，路上凹凸不平，有好多人挖地洞。啲地洞係攞嚟防止日本兵和佢嘅裝甲車。
When I was 8 years old, I went to China. I visited the same villages that my pawpaw and gungun came from. There was a lot of poverty, and the roads had mud. They were just mud roads.
我哋一直沿着海岸線走，幾天後來到一個漁村。叫做港海，呢個地方只係離香港80米，係台山人愛出嘅一個好地點。從港海，我們租去一架小船。有一次喺我哋食飯嘅時候，要立刻緊急彎身，好彩日本兵冇炸到我哋嘅船。自此之後，我哋嘅船一直都沿着珠江河到達香港。呢個時候，我十分好彩。我丈夫喺好艱難嘅情況下，佢肯求佢一位親戚借咗佢200磅俾佢辦手續，所 所以我得到咗2年嘅居留紙。嗰時一共有25名婦女離開台山，其中有5名係姓陳嘅。
She was allowed into New Zealand finally because the New Zealand government relaxed their rules about allowing the wives and children of Chinese men who lived here to come in. But she thought she would have to return as soon as the war was finished.
喺香港搭船去悉尼，大概要30日，好多人都暈船浪。喺悉尼再搭3日船到威靈頓。喺1940年5月7號到威靈頓，我嘅丈夫嚟接我。我哋搭長途火車到但爾頓。
I think it makes me feel a bit sad, actually. I mean, I think it's great that she got the opportunity to come out, but it makes me sad to think that she wasn't allowed to come before then. You know, she was in her mid-30s by the time she had to make this really dangerous journey by herself. I just think, you know, it's really sad.
喺但爾頓10個月後，我生下我唯一嘅兒子 Peter， 然後又生咗5個女。之後我就喺紐西蘭開始咗新嘅生活。
My name's Marjorie Leung Lee Chin.
Yeah. Okay.
Last daughter of Fong She. I've lived in Wellington for many years now. My earliest memories, I suppose, was when we had the laundry in Hanover Street. That was in Dunedin. In those days, we had to boil our water in a big copper. We didn't have washing machines, and you used to scrub with wooden scrubbing boards. And then in later years, we bought a fish and chip shop, which was in the Octagon, which was opposite St Paul's Cathedral. We were poor. We used to always eat our meals at the shop. All we ate was oysters, fish, crayfish, the fish heads, the bellies. We had the leftover bits. But to this day, those are the bits I like to eat. She did the ham choy. She did ham yu. In those days, you couldn't buy rice flour or anything. I remember she used to soak rice the night before, and in the morning we used to have an old pot and a hammer, a sledgehammer, and we used to have to dong mai, and then she'd have a sieve and we'd sieve it, and we'd make jichong fan. My brother was the eldest and I was the last. She wanted another boy, but of course my brother was first, and then she had 5 girls. By then she was too old to try again, I think. Mum was really over the moon when Peter became a lawyer, although he did have to sit the last year twice. I had to put that one in.
And because so many of you are from outside of Dunedin, let me say to you, welcome to the south, to the deep, deep south, and to Dunedin town.
Peter became the first Chinese mayor in Dunedin. Mum and Dad both would have been so proud, yeah, as we all are, yeah. Yeah, Mum would have been proud for everything Peter's done for Dunedin, getting the new Chinese garden in there, because the entrance, they actually, in the end, the Chinese gifted that to us. My memories are more for the fish and chip shop rather than the laundry. My mum had me when she was 44, so that, yeah, she was in her 50s when we were in the fish and chip shop. And Dad used to go away a lot, and she was left to look after the shop. Well, I was lucky that I managed to be by her side when she passed away, which was lovely because I never really saw my mum cry, but she shed a tear before she took her last breath. Yeah, we shed a tear together. That's lovely.
My
name's Sabrina Leung. I'm 25 years old and I was born and raised in Auckland. We grew up in One Tree Hill in Auckland, and I went to the local primary school for a couple of years, and then I moved to a private girls' school from year 4 onwards for the rest of my schooling. Yeah, a lot of my friends are European. At school, I didn't have a lot of Chinese or I guess culturally diverse friends. I studied at the University of Otago and I studied an applied science degree majoring in consumer food science and marketing. I currently work at Fisher & Paykel Appliances as an associate product manager in the global product management team. I've been really fortunate to grow up the way I've grown up, with a family that is really ingrained into New Zealand culture but also really celebrates my Chinese culture still. NZCA have an initiative called YLC, which stands for Youth Leadership Camp. It's a camp really about teenagers and young adults exploring their identity and their culture. It's a really nice way to get 50 plus teenagers from around the country who really, a lot of our parents grew up together or our grandparents know each other, and to really foster those connections as well as building on our own leadership skills and what we could bring with our own individual identities. So I've been involved at Easter tournament my whole life. I think I played my first Easter when I was 5 and I'm 26 now, so that's quite a long time. So the Easter tournament runs every year. It is a sporting and cultural tournament that is held between 4 centres, so between Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch and Dunedin, and it rotates every year. It's a really big opportunity for people around New Zealand to, I guess, play for a bit of pride for where they're from. And there's a lot of sports, so from basketball to volleyball to lawn bowls to a whole lot of indoor sports that we all basically play over the Easter weekend alongside a bunch of socials.
I see the Easter tournament as an iconic event for our community. It's not just a sports tournament, it brings everyone together. You play hard, you party hard. It's the heart of our community, and I think this is a place where you find your tribe.
I was involved in lots of Easter tournaments when I was younger, and we travelled around for those, and I played basketball. Hi, my name is Saffron. I'm 15 years old and I live in Wadestown. My papa's name is Marjorie. I'm very close with my papa and my gungung, and we have a good relationship. I think it's important to keep my Chinese culture alive because it's part of my identity and it's who I am, so yeah, to celebrate that.
Growing up in New Zealand, I was always conscious that the Chinese culture isn't just everywhere, and so you have to seek it out. And because my children are half Chinese and half Lebanese, I wanted them to have an understanding of their Chinese roots, and so I sent them to Yoyiyan, or YYY, at the Wellington Sports and Cultural Centre to do preschool classes which involved Chinese, learning Chinese songs and a little bit of Chinese language and numbers.
I attended Yoyiyan and Cantonese class where I learnt a bit of Cantonese. For Chinese New Year, I used to do performances with Yoyiyan and Chinese dancing as well. And we performed on stage and we did like a little parade where we walked through Wellington to the TSB.
Yes, about 1994, we bought a piece of land in Martinborough, which is about an hour and a half out of Wellington, and we developed a vineyard. Yeah, and it was called the Malmaison. We set aside the better barrels and we named them after the grandchildren. Actually, I originally wanted to be a nurse, But my mum said you couldn't go because my sister Rita, who was 2 above me, she was a nurse. She went nursing, and in those days you had to live out, be in the nurse's home. And of course, she ended up being with a Guangdong, with a Pākehā boy. So they said, no, you can't go nursing. I didn't have an arranged marriage, and I wasn't enticed by any Guangdongs.
I think my parents have always said that the one thing that they could give us was an education. I always wanted to go down to Otago. My brother went there before me, or most of my cousins went there, and I just wanted to kind of be away from home and enjoy a different place. And I chose to study law in the end. I didn't face any pressures to marry within the Chinese community. My father was quite clear. He thought that it was unreasonable to bring us up in a society where it was mainly non-Chinese and expect us to suddenly find someone in this very small pool. So they're very supportive of any relationship I had, and definitely was not based on race and being expected to marry Chinese. My husband Greg and I met when I was working as a lawyer in Wellington. But Greg's actually from Dunedin, and he's part Lebanese, and his Lebanese roots are kind of parallel to the Chinese story in Dunedin, as in his ancestors came out to provide goods to the miners on the goldfields, and then they also immigrated from Lebanon to Otago.
So my great-great-great-grandfather, Choi Su Hoi, was a gold miner who came from China. And when he passed away, his bones were sent on a ship to go back to China. 499 miners passed away, and their bones were sent back to China to be with their families. And I think they struck a rock off the coast of the Hokianga and the boat sank. And the Māori and the iwi up there took really good care of them. So we've been up there a couple of times to visit and kind of have a memorial up there for that side of my family.
And comparing, I guess, my life to the life that I think my pōpō led, she grew up in rural China. For me, I was able to study and go to university. I could make decisions about my own life, whereas I think she was, married young and, always had duty to her family, whereas I don't have the same duties. And I was able to also go overseas, but not as a refugee. So I feel like I had more opportunities. But of course, I only had them because she was able to come to New Zealand in the first place. So for that, I'm grateful.
I think my taipo was a really strong woman, and I think that she would just really encourage us to speak up and stand up for what we wanted without feeling like we didn't belong.
Being a Chinese woman in Aotearoa today, I think more for me it's being a woman and, being a lawyer and, quite frequently being the only woman in the room sometimes. That's more about gender inequity than being Chinese, I think.
I think being a young Chinese New Zealander now, it's a great place to be. I think that in the future, Chinese New Zealand youth are hopefully really going to have a really strong voice. New Zealand's just becoming more multicultural and more, I guess, intertwined in cultures, which is really great to see.
If my mother was still alive, I'd say thank you for bringing us into the world and giving us our lives. And our lives, been a lot better than what she would have had here.
There's war in the air, our cupboards are bare. The time has come, the time that I fear. Daughter, sweet daughter, you must go alone to a foreign country far from your home and be an immigrant woman, young, brave, and free. Refugee woman, crossing land and sea.
Phi thường cảm謝 New Zealand On Air 嘅幫助。